Right. Hey, everybody. What's up? Welcome back to the second episode of E2KG's entertainment series, Street Level. Tonight, we're wrapping up our discussion of The Punisher, the Netflix original series starring the seminal ultraviolet character from the Marvel comic book universe. But on reporter David's flashing his Punisher trade paperback novel up on the screen. So if you're wondering why I sound funny, it's because I'm working around with my Sound Blaster Omni Surround voice effect transcoder, and currently I have the Marine accent on, which I thought was most appropriate for tonight since I chose to wear the green with the camo thing. And we're talking about the Punisher, who was a former Spec Ops Marine. So it's not often that I have this particular setup going, so I thought it'd be fun to play around with it tonight. But we'll go ahead and turn that off. So here with me, as always, I have my partner in crime, Mr. Dave Pecci. How you doing, Dave?
I'm doing good. I brought the prop tonight, as I said.
Nice.
So I was thinking about pulling out my other comic, but I think this one's good because it also has a picture of Micro in there and Jigsaw.
Oh, really?
So I got the best prop, man. I don't know what to say.
So as I mentioned tonight, this is our second episode of Street Level. The first one we covered episodes 1 through 6 of the Netflix original show, The Punisher. It's looking around the internet and at some of our fellow creators on YouTube and whatnot. It looks like everyone was inundated at the end of the year with all of the crazy content, going to see Star Wars: Return of the Jedi, and just trying to keep up. And it looks like The Punisher kind of, I don't want to say suffered from it. I think lots of people watched it, but I just think that not everybody has gotten around to having a discussion about it until here near the end of the year. So I think, Dave, I just want to go ahead and get started. So this is one of the nights where I have not prepared notes. So I guess a little bit of admin and house cleaning. So as it, if you've read the little intro blurb underneath the video, this is the last. I'm sorry, you're probably going to get a little crackling here. This is probably the last time that we're going to be live streaming directly from the GWW Radio YouTube channel. Our live streaming capability should be restored on our own YouTube channel here as of tomorrow. And it's just kind of a serendipitous sequence of timing where we, the entertainment crew, are doing the last podcast for the E2KG network for calendar year 2017. The games crew will be back from a hiatus on the 9th of January, kicking off the new year. And at that point, we will be back over on our own YouTube channel for our live shows. And then the podcast episodes will be edited, and then the edited versions will be posted over with our parent podcast affiliate, the GWW. So that's just a little bit of house cleaning. Dave, I think I personally want to just get started with our overall feelings about the ending of the show, and then kind of work our way backwards to the other episodes. So, okay. Do you want to go ahead and kick us off with your general feelings on how the show wrapped up?
Yeah, sure. Overall, I kind of thought the last episodes were a bit too gratuitous, too much kind of sex and nudity scenes. More violence, which was good because there was a lot of moving parts, and I think there needed to be a little bit more action. And it was pretty intense. The last 2 episodes, a lot of violence that made up. So I feel like that might have had an impact where like you kind of settle in, and then all of a sudden you get hit with a bunch of violence and blood, and holy crap. So, and I think I like to throw this in there, but this is a spoiler podcast, so we will be talking about things that happen. So if you have not seen the last 7 episodes, turn this podcast off, watch the last 7, and then come back. I liked how it ended. I think that they're setting it up so season 2 is not going to have Billy Russo Jigsaw in it, which is really good. I really like having that break from a villain and seeing something new. They did that with Daredevil, where Wilson Fisk was out. And I can't really think of any other examples because I think that's the only Netflix season with 2 seasons so far. Crazy. Um, I don't know what they're going to do with David Lieberman. I really loved that. I liked his ending. Where he was I liked Madani's ending. I feel like they could end her right where she's at, and not bring her back. It would be a twist though if she came back and she found out she was pregnant because she had sex a couple times with Billy Russo and things can happen. But maybe not, because I really Billy Russo really disgusted me the more and more we got to see of him close to the end, even more than Agent Orange. Like, Billy just turned out to be this kind of selfish, feel bad for me because I had a druggy mom. And you feel bad, but there's at a point where, okay, I feel bad for you, but you're really awful. Just the things you have done are awful. I felt for Lewis, and I felt that his subplot was important because the season ends with Punisher kind of sharing his vet story, and I feel that his kind, like, the original Punisher is about the war against drugs, which was more prevalent in the 80s, and right now we're kind of in this world where we're talking about war and Trump and North Korea and China and Iran, and so I feel like that's a bit more relevant to talk about veterans coming out, and kind of Punisher's new mantle is kind of the war against kind of corrupt politicians in the government right now and standing up for unacknowledged soldiers. So I appreciated that aspect to it. And I don't think that it was overly political one way for an agenda. I don't think Punisher is like a pro-gun, propaganda at all or anything like that, or anti-gun.
Let's talk about that for a minute, because one of the things so I wound up feeling better about the first half of the season than the second.
Oh no!
Yeah. So, I felt the second half of the season started, and it's a hard thing to say because it's a serious series, right? It's not. Yeah. There's a little lighthearted here, but I guess most of your lighthearted humor stuff is definitely in that first half, and then I felt like the second half of it. It's not the right articulation, but it's the only thing I can reach for right now. Is I felt like the second half started to take itself too seriously. Because all of the really witty banter and the kind of
it was gone. It was
right. Yeah, and you mentioned the gun thing, right? And it was interesting for me, and maybe it's just I just didn't think about it as much. But the first half of the season, I was kind of fine with everything. The second half of the season, I started really questioning about why does Disney and Marvel Studios choose now to drop this type of show, right? 2017. I will say subjectively, I won't say statistically because I haven't looked at the statistics. But it's all foremost in our minds that some set of people have become emboldened by recent political events to take violent actions, while many others are simply taking violent actions because it's the time that they choose to take violent actions. I'm not going to lay all that at the feet of the current administration or how the 2016 election turned out. But it was a fairly violent year last year, particularly with regards to public shootings and terrorist events and gun violence. Now, I don't care. So let me first of all say to me, when there's violence and terrorism and public murders and massacres, it doesn't really matter to me whether it's by gun or by vehicle. It is a problem. Let me also say I am a gun owner, and my guns are maintained in a ready state. They are not trophy devices that sit in a safe the whole time. I firmly believe in my right to own guns to protect my own home. I don't necessarily agree with everything that's done to regulate gun ownership in this country, and I definitely don't align with the notion of, oh my God, if you slap 2 regulations on it, then you've completely summarily removed all of our rights to gun ownership. I think that's a ludicrous premise. So, but in the area of that political discussion, I have things that I am for and I have things that I am against. The topic of gun control and gun violence in this country, it seems like it's not well served by something like The Punisher dropping on Netflix. And at the end of the day, when you roll this back, this is Marvel, and then when you roll it back further, it's ABC, and then when you roll it back further, it's Disney. It's largely questionable content, unless the point is to provoke having those discussions. And I don't know whether or not the intent, if there was any intent there, was to provoke them for as a proponent of gun rights, or as a or as an argument against gun rights. So all of those things really burbled to me much more so in the second part of the season than they did in the first. I think just because there were just physically more guns in the second half of the season, and that theme, it seemed like it came to the surface more. It just felt like the first half of the season is more about just Frank and the effed up stuff that he experienced in Afghanistan and then was done to him. But the second half of the season seemed like it started to bring out much more. Like you mentioned, it feels like the second half of the season was much more violent, much more gratuitous, and much less about Frank Castle's like getting even, right? Like,
yeah. The other thing too, like on your point, I was going to add, like with Lewis, I noticed that they didn't make him a gun shooter, right? He used bombs for terrorism. He didn't. So, like the point of that is like, people are gonna, they're gonna find other ways, if they're that crazy, The fact that I'm not sure people are gonna be smart enough to make bombs, maybe not. But that I just wanted to point that out that Lewis was not a gun shooter. He could have, but he used bombs instead.
No, you're absolutely right. It was definitely, look, I don't know what the production company or the directors intended. As I mentioned, my takeaway is I don't really care if it's guns, knives, shovels, or bombs, right? It's the generic topic of violence and what drives people to it, and the people that they impact, right? And the measures that they take, was more to me what the dialogue was about, not simply gun ownership, although, like I said, I felt like that was deliberately burbled to the surface more in the second half of the season. I'm right there with you with the scenes of intimacy, like on 2 specific things. So I mentioned the thing in the first half of the season about Madani and Billy Russo, and me. And of course, at the time, we didn't know that Billy Russo was one of the bad guys. And as it started to look that way, at one point I felt like, well, maybe they just had that scene so that it would bring about the conflict between those two. But the conflict between those two is manifested in a very, I don't want to say irrelevant, but in a very like it's a microscopic moment in time, right? Basically, the only time that those two have a direct confrontation where that moment of intimacy that was shown on that in the first half of the season made any difference was the firefight at the carousel, which, like, she takes a shot at him and he shoots her, and then it's over. I had thought that they were building up to like an actual standoff between the two. I mean, I guess there is the scene in the stairwell, right, when they when he basically takes a shot at Frank, and we first get the reveal that he is a bad guy and that he killed Stein. Him admitting to it. But I didn't feel like that was a significant enough moment of tension to really warrant the sex scene between the two. There are, I think, 2 other sex scenes between them in the second half of the season, and I was just like, I don't know why I'm watching this. Like, I don't know what this adds to the story.
I think the thing was he kind of lied to her through many things from the very beginning, right? His true intentions with Frank, the fact that he knew what happened and what happened to her partner, the fact that he lied about Stein, like, and the fact that he was using her to get information, and just, you know, having sex with her is just kind of icing on the cake about how much of a jerk he was to Madani.
Yeah, but I don't know. I guess I don't feel like they really earned the payoff for it in this season. Now, maybe there's a payoff in season 2 or season 3, but to me, that the payoff for that is having having on-scene moments of extreme tension between the two of them, and extreme physical conflict, right? Where she is attempting to basically get back at him out of her feeling of being violated, and I don't feel like they built that into the story. The real problem, the real moment of intimacy scene that I really had problems with are the ones with Frank and his wife. Like, look, I'm married. Like, if I'm on death's doorstep, I just don't think that that's what's going through my head, right? And yes, I definitely think about my wife and our good times together, but I don't think about us having. I don't think I'm going to be thinking about us having sex, right? I think, first of all, I think I'm going to be spending 90% of whatever gray matter capacity I have thinking about how the hell to get out of the situation that I'm in. So I really didn't understand that point. And part of the problem with, and I get it, I think they were deliberately trying to skew away from showing on screen moments of violence involving the children. But the problem with that in the storytelling is that let's assume if you're a nuclear family, right, husband, wife, 2 kids, that as you're going through all the things that Frank Castle's going through, including his near-death scene, that 50% of your time and imagery is spent thinking about your wife, and there's 25% of time thinking about each kid, right? By choosing to not show things about the kids so much, you wind up with a larger percentage of the on-screen time that's being conveyed to the viewer being about the wife, to the point where you're like, geez, does this guy think about his kids at all? I don't think that was the case. I think it was a matter of super violent show. It's Disney. They don't want to show a bunch of violent stuff about the kids. So you never see the kids getting shot. You never see, the closest you get to it is you see, which is really, again, effed up. Like, so apparently, I guess the way it went down is they came into the house, they shot the wife in the house in the master bedroom, and then I guess they took them all somewhere and took them to that park with the carousels and killed one of the kids there because you get the blood splattering.
No, I didn't understand. I think that they were at a park and that it was a big shootout and that they got other people in the shootout too. I don't think there was a home invasion. I mean, at least that's what I took away from it.
No, I definitely think there was a home invasion because the whole show, they show the wife getting shot in the head in the master bedroom. So my takeaway from it is that that's the way she got killed. But then, to me, what they seemed to show in the second half of the season, I felt like, is they showed that, I guess, then they transported Frank and the 2 kids to the park, and then killed one of the kids there, which again, I don't really understand. Billy mentions that at some point when they tried to kill Frank, they miss, which I'm like, I don't know how they could have missed him if they were trying to kill him in the master bedroom as well. So my point is there were some problems with it, right? In the Thomas Jane Punisher, if I remember correctly, they had them all outside as they were like picnicking on the beach or something like that.
Right. Well, that's what I thought, that they were at a park, kind of like at that last episode, you know, where they're at the park with Billy, and then I'm thinking that the shootout begins, and then, you know, the casualties were meant to be a cover-up to kill Frank. But I could be totally wrong, because there was something that went, because the house I thought was in perfect condition, right? If you go back to, well, you haven't seen the Daredevil parts of the Punisher, but I believe his house was like pristine, like nothing, that they hadn't been in there since whatever happened.
Yeah, I don't know, because I didn't watch that part of it. But my thing is, I'm right there with you with the intimacy scenes. I felt like they were just kind of weird And I get maybe that you want to do a little existentialism in some of those scenes, but that seemed to carry it too far. So,
Yeah.
So again, a couple other things that I had problems with in the second half is, and I thought when we started this journey we weren't going to have this, right? But because he's already the Punisher, right? This isn't an origin story. We've talked frequently on this show and others.
Are you leading up to he brings back the skull?
Is how long it takes him, right? So if you everybody who's ever watched me on a podcast and all my friends on the E2KG network know that typically when they do an origin story, at some point I am screaming at the television set, put on the damn suit, right? Put on the forking suit, right? And I thought we weren't going to have to go through that in this because he's already been the Punisher, right? He doesn't put the blasted skull on till like episode, what, like 8 or 9? And so I was frustrated.
Later than that, I feel like episode 10 or something.
10. Yeah, right. Like he doesn't put on the suit until he is until they realize that they know where the hideout is.
Yeah,
and
right.
The guys are coming to the hideout. So yeah, so particular problems. What did you think about the whole scene of Sarah kissing Frank?
I mean, you know that was coming, and that it needed to be addressed eventually. But I knew that there was no way that it was ever going to happen between them. Like, I knew Frank was gonna, and it's stupid like how they got caught, right? Because David Lieberman or Micro sends Frank over there all the time to protect them, and at the end of the day, him going over there causes the young son to be all like, "Oh, I'm going to turn this dude in because I don't want him to get too close to my mom," and gets them all in trouble. So if he was not such a big picture, it's possible the kid would have just been like, I'm not going to bother calling the cops on the guy.
Yeah, so I actually didn't see it coming in meaning I was expecting and hoping that they wouldn't do the kissing scene. So one of the things where the story falls short for me is I wanted a direct conversation between Frank and David, and I wanted to hear Frank say, I wanted to hear David say, "Hey man, you're getting really tight with my family." Like, of course, Lieberman is the one who sends him over there the first time to sign the insurance paperwork, and then proceeds to watch him through many scenes of him interacting with the Lieberman family.
I know, it's so stupid.
Yeah, and I was expecting, again, because now in the second half of the season we're talking about payoffs, right, of the stuff we sat through in the first half. I wanted there to be a frank, open, candid conversation where Lieberman says, "Hey, Frank, you're getting really tight with my family. I don't know that that's like where you should be taking it." And I wanted to hear Frank tell him, "Look, I'm sticking tight with your family, one, to protect them, but also so that you see what they're going through when you're not there. Because I want you to stay focused on the prize for you," right? Part of this is about me evening the table with what was done to my family, but my family's gone, and so I can't ever set that right. But if we win this, you have an opportunity to go back to your family. You have an opportunity to protect them. You're fighting, I'm fighting for people who are dead. You're fighting for people who are alive and to live. And so, yeah, if you see me on camera, interacting with your family, I want you to remember that. I want you to be focused on that's what you want to get back to. And they never have that conversation, and I feel like that's such a shortfall, right, in the story. I wanted to hear Frank admit that he knew it was uncomfortable for David to be seeing that, but that he wanted him to remember that it was uncomfortable, another man taking over your family, because he wanted David to stay focused and complete this mission so that that wouldn't happen, right? And like I said, unfortunately, they never had that conversation, which I felt was a little bit disappointing. Frank's interaction with Karen Page, right? So we have the episode where Lewis, the bomber, right?
She's so much better Punisher though than Daredevil. Like, I hope she doesn't go back to Daredevil now.
No, right. I completely agree with you. I just want to see her on. I want to see her do cameos on Daredevil, but I want Punisher to become her primary show. But we have the scene where Frank goes way out of his way to rescue her, and then we have the scene in the elevator where the two of them get very close. I think it looks to me like Karen wants to go in for the kiss, and Frank, the expression we see on Frank's face, as well as then reflected in Karen's face when she realizes he's not going to kiss her, is them both realizing that Frank Castle is just too full of pain and grief to ever get back to a point where he is going to feel, where he's ever going to be able to have any kind of relationship. Did you have any kind of different takeaway from that scene, or was there something different that you wanted to see happen?
I totally agreed with you in that scene, yeah.
All right, so this is one point where I want to skip right to the end. Best scene I felt of all, although I wasn't supremely happy with the final closing episodes. I was extremely pumped to see that the end resolution was that he was basically going to turn Billy Russo into Jigsaw. That, again, I'm not a super huge fan of the Punisher in the comics, but I do recognize a little bit of the mythology, and I thought that was so awesome to see him do that. Were you expecting it to go any differently? Were you surprised by that? Did you applaud that move? Because I know...
No, it was good, and it was pretty brutal, too. Like, holy damn. Like, it's kind of like, almost like I feel like, I wish that it ended where he thought that he killed Billy, and then he gets away somehow. Because it's like, how stupid are you to let the guy, like, live? You know, like, it just makes me wonder, how are they going to deal with him coming back, you know? Because he's going to want to kill Madani, and he's going to want to kill Frank again, and he's want to kill Lieberman and his family. So it's like, they're going to have to deal with that somehow. And then I'm wondering, are they going to finally bring Jigsaw into the Magia? Is he going to become this crime lord that he is in the comics? And I feel like showing my Jigsaw picture. Yeah, so here's a good picture of Jigsaw, and I believe this other guy is Hammerhead, but Jigsaw is the one. Let's see. It's not. Let's see. There we go. Let's see.
Yeah, it's having a little problem focusing, but hold on, let me get you back on the screen. Yeah, so that I don't know that that's the most brutal representation of him. I think was it the Ray Stevenson Punisher had a more kind of cartoony and extreme take on Jigsaw's appearance in the third Punisher movie.
Yeah. And in this comic, it's kind of, he doesn't really have staples like holding his face together. It's just kind of like they're all scars that came together and all nasty. While we're on the topic, I want to show you what Micro looks like in the comics because he's a bit different. This can come through. That dude right there is Micro.
Yeah, balding with the
glasses. Yeah.
Right. So the other thing I didn't like about the second half of the season was, again, that relationship between Micro and Frank didn't seem as tight. Although they really pulled it together in I can't remember if it was episode 12 or 13. I guess 12, where Micro finally kind of unbuckles from his pact that he made with Frank and leads the DHS to the hideout. They chase Billy Russo off. Of course, Agent Orange is dead by that time. But they have the scene where where they're trying to administer some type of medical aid to Frank, and he's non-responsive at first, and Micro screams, oh my God, my friend is dying. And I thought that was like one of the most, that was one of the most emotional scenes. I think the most emotional scene for me was,
go on.
Yeah,
Sorry.
No,
I was going to say what was powerful for me was this. It was really the scene where David Lieberman talks to Madani about Frank's, this guy's already been beating himself up, and I think Madani, unspokenly finally forgives him, and it's even more so at the very end where he gets a clean slate from the head of the CIA, and it's because of Madani's word, and it's like, wow, like and then the other thing, that was like powerful. I mean, that was the most powerful. The scene where David Lieberman talks to Madani about Frank's true intention, that he's sorry and repentant of what happened, but then also the scene where she forgives him. But the other funny scene is when Madani says to Frank, I better not see you around again. And Frank walks out and he's like, I'll see you around, Madani.
Right.
And then sure enough, like, what is it? The next episode, they see each other again to take out Billy one more time. Oh, that was.
Yeah.
Good.
So for me, I think the most powerful scene of the closing episodes is the Lieberman family hug. So when he comes into the I think it's when he comes into the protected custody hotel room, or maybe it's at the DHS headquarters. I can't remember which, but where the wife hugs him, and then it's at the DHS headquarters in the conference room where he walks in, and the wife comes up and starts hitting him. Leo, the older daughter, tells her mom to stop. Lieberman eventually grabs his wife and hugs her, and she just starts sobbing. I'm actually having a hard time describing it without choking up myself. And then Leo comes up out of the seat and goes and hugs the both of them. And then Zach, the son, comes up, and it's a four-way group hug. That I kind of like lost it at that point in the show. So I guess overall, probably my biggest problem wrestling the second half of the season to ground was, as I mentioned when this started, right? The Punisher. So the reason I never liked the Punisher in the comics was because he just felt like this ultra-violent, gun-toting. I felt like that character was meant to appeal. And again, as I mentioned in Street Level Episode 1, I need to go back and look at some of the early origins of the Punisher, because I did not realize he was created by Jerry Conway, who is one of my favorite comic book writers of all times, and was, to me, I know Jerry Conway primarily for arguably the best run. I think he was the creator, but arguably the best run of the Teen Titans that was ever written for DC Comics. Really, the run that made the Teen Titans a beloved team. But I felt like the Punisher was written and created to appeal to the type of boys that I didn't like growing up as a kid, and they were the other kids who were into all the ultraviolet stuff from the 80s, right? Who were into Commando and Predator and Hill Street Blues. Contra. Yeah. So, and again, some of those pieces of content I appreciated. Like I love Predator and Predator 2, but the discussion that those kids had was about all the blood and the gore, and I was like, I'm not interested in that. They were the kids who were in love with Rambo, right? And they were also ultra patriots and a lot of other things, and racist. So that was probably part of it. But I never glommed onto stuff that was just ultra violent and gratuitous just for the sake of the violence and the blood and the gore. I've never been into that, and so I never liked the Punisher. And when other when other kids who I did like would say, well, why don't you read The Punisher? I'm like, because it's just a bunch of blood and gore. Like, I don't know that there's actually a story there that I'm interested in. So that's reason one. The second reason, and more pertinently to this Netflix series, where I started to struggle with it is, as we all know, I love the MCU because of its own branding statement. It's all connected. And that's what I personally love in comics. People talk a lot today about how there's problems with all the comic book readers who castigate Marvel and DC when they fail to maintain continuity. There's a lot of philosophy about, look, you should just want writers to just write good stories, and the hell with continuity. Don't get wrapped around the axle about it. But what I love in the things that I'm in love with in the geek world is I love world building, right? And you build worlds in comic books by having continuity. You build worlds by having comics where you get excited when you see a guest appearance by another hero, because it makes you feel like you're in a world, not just in this one myopic story. When I got into comics by starting with Avengers in Marvel and Justice League in DC, because I figured that's where you should start, because that's where all the branches run to. So one of my big problems with this in the second half of the season, as we get into episodes 7 and 8, is the point where I realize, there's not going to be any mention of the larger MCU in this, nor are we going to get any cameos from any of the Netflix Marvel Knights street level heroes. And at that point, it's still a good, solid, I'll call it single player story, right? But I was definitely disappointed by it not having any hook. And I was like, can we get Matt Murdock to walk in and say, let me see Frank Capsule's file? Like, yes, Karen Page is there, but one of the things that as we turn the corner into the second half of the season, that I was like, it started to wear on me a little bit, is how I don't know how many Coulsons we need in the Marvel universe, right? Coulson was a very special character who did a very specific thing across Marvel Phase 1 and Phase 2. And actually, I should just say Phase 1, right? Because Phase 1 ends with the Avengers, and that's where he's killed. In the Netflix shows, we have at least 3 Coulsons, right? We have Claire, who shows up in everything. We have Karen showing up in multiple shows, because she was on Daredevil, she was in The Defenders, and now she's on The Punisher. And we have Turk, right? The African American criminal who was employed by Cottonmouth, and actually got a little bit of respect from Stryker on the Luke Cage show, and then has appeared in The Defenders and Iron Fist, I want to say. I can't remember, but he shows up in multiples of these shows.
And wasn't he in Punisher too, right?
He was in Punisher. Yeah. He was absolutely in Punisher. That's what I'm saying. And at first, when I saw Turk, I was like, oh, this is great. He's like the guy who shows up in every... Wait a second. we have 2 other characters who I like, and then I was like, I don't know how many... And I'm like, man, this is really like Coulson. And I'm like, I don't know that I need a Coulson. I definitely don't know that I need 3, right? Across every single one of these shows. So
at least Claire didn't show up.
True. But here's what's funny. As I'm watching what's happening to Frank Capsule this whole time, I'm like, if anybody needs to show up in this Netflix show, it's Claire, because this guy needs to nurse. Right? Which will bring me around, and then I'll turn it over to you. It should bring me around to like kind of like my final thing that I started to kind of get a little shaky with in the second half of this season, was where I do like the Punisher and where I am interested in him is as a great tactician, right? And this show in the second half of the season in particular takes the angle of wanting to highlight his extreme willpower. And that's fine, but what I really want to see from the Punisher is I don't really want to see him walking stodgily into a hail of bullets, right? And seeing him get shot and keep going. that's a thing you maybe do one time, but all of the second half of the season is he gets hit in every firefight. Every firefight. So, so we have a viewer. I won't say his whole name. I'll just say Sloppy. It says mentioning that the best part of the Punisher is his yell, and I'll just say that is a good one. So I wanted to see more of him being this supreme tactician and kind of mopping the floor with people. We get to see that a little bit when in the invasion of the hideout. But then my problem is okay, but I would kind of expect him to have the upper hand and advantage there when you're defending, right? Because tactically it's typically easier to defend, particularly from a known territory, against the enemy that's entering into the unknown, right? But when they come back around and do this the second time, I hope it's more about him doing things to not take bullets than it is about him just showing his extreme strength of will. So what else from you, Dave? What other things really define your total takeaway from the show as we went through the closing episodes?
I'm with you. I like the first half of the season better. I mean, the highlights there were some really good scenes like you and I both talked about, the hugging scene, the Lieberman family coming back together, Madani's, redemption, or not her personal, but kind of her, I don't know if redemption's the right word, but her kind of justice, getting justice that she got. And I did enjoy the Lewis subplot and Jigsaw, but there was a lot of in-between scenes that I thought were kind of like, the whole interaction with the whole CIA lady was kind of like kind of stupid to me. It's like, why isn't this lady just like, say I'm done with you, and then Agent Orange just goes behind her back? Like, I don't know if we need to drag another, a couple other dirty politicians in there. Okay, like the senator, right? The guy runs away and he pushes Karen into Lewis's. Like, I was like, what a fucking coward! Like that douche, It's like, and it's sad. Like Karen's like, she's like, have you ever been in a situation where you need to carry a gun? Well, I have, and like Karen says it like it is, and I really like that. So there was some of those scenes that were kind of like, the editor kind of annoyed me in the second half of the season, where they get that death threat and the dude's like, oh, we need to go to the police. And Ralphie, the person over Madani, I didn't really care for his part. So there's just those things that I didn't like for the second half, and just highlighting on those. I think Punisher Season 2 is going to be good, and I think it'll be interesting to see Punisher kind of pick up that mantle, where I think it's going in the direction where he's probably going to, see somebody's in trouble and it's going to be some corrupt political movement or something, and he takes them down or something like that. Or maybe I don't know, maybe there's going to be dirty cops or something like that. It would be interesting to see if they take another big villain, or if they just stick one of the kind of the Marvel street level villains in there. I mean, one of the big ones for Punisher is Barracuda, and so they could pull him, or they could pull maybe one of Spider-Man's villains and stick him in there. Who knows? It'd be interesting to see what happens.
So let me connect with you right there, because I guess the other thing, and maybe I just didn't wrap it up and come around to it, but I think what I was trying to get around to was, the best effect for the Punisher is when he is that foil to the other Marvel heroes, right? Firmly putting in their face and in the reader's face the difference in approaches, right? That most of the heroes are about trying to apprehend people. Punisher is just like, they just need to be taken out, right? There's no patience, there's no tolerance. There's this whole judge, jury, and executioner thing, and we didn't get that in season 1. and Sloppy in the chat room mentioned that we already saw Daredevil versus Punisher, and that is definitely a point to be made for everyone who has watched all of the Netflix Marvel stuff. I haven't, because I've had a problem sticking with Daredevil. When I have tried to get through season 1 and season 2 of that. I guess I still feel like 90% of the time that is the foil that I need to see to make the Punisher an effective hero for me. Maybe shouldn't say hero, but an effective character for me. We didn't get that in season 1. This show is very much in the vein of a Marvel Studios piece of content where the creative direction has been go make a movie, right? And then paint all the Marvel Universe stuff on top of it, right? So I always talk about how Ant-Man is great because it is a heist movie, right? That could have easily been Ocean's 11 or whatever, and there could have been nary a superhero in it, and it would have still been a fine movie because they built a story around it, right? Captain America, Winter Soldier is a spy movie, a high-action adventure movie, and then you can throw Captain America and Winter Soldier into it. This TV show is very much like, and I didn't watch the stuff when I was a kid, so it feels very much like the Charles Bronson kind of stuff, right? There's another actor that I was thinking of that his whole series of movies was always about stuff like this. So, and I get it, and it's a solid story in that vein. To make it a Marvel thing, it works better for me if I see the Punisher in stark contrast to somebody wearing tights or a cape, right? So, and I get that the desire was to ground it very firmly, but then I guess it becomes questionable for me when you ground something like this and then say that it's so set in this universe. I guess to me, there's the concept of you ground it too much, right? And then I'm like, well, is this in this universe at all, or does it need to be in this universe? So again, that's just kind of pieces where I started to decouple. So I feel like that's the whole shebang, Dave. I want to come back to where this breaks out against the other Netflix Marvel shows that you have watched.
So you asked me this question last week, and I still.
So just to set it up for any viewers or people who come back and watch this later, we asked this question halfway through the series, and now we're coming back to ask this question again now that we've both viewed the whole thing.
Yeah, I still put Daredevil at number 1, Jessica number 2, Punisher 3, then Luke Cage, then Defenders, and then Iron Fist. And Iron Fist just to me falls short because the main enemy was the Hand, and I just feel like we had enough of the Hand being a main enemy in Daredevil season 2 with the introduction of the Punisher. And it just there wasn't enough action either in Iron Fist. And I felt the same with Defenders. It was too much of a talking head show and not enough action. And Luke Cage was really good. But between the two, maybe because I'm more familiar with the Punisher stuck with me more. And Jessica Jones was just, I thought it was just kind of one of those, I haven't seen a lot of stuff that they did in there, and the actor just had a lot of humor that I caught on to, and Daredevil was just kind of a lot of action, and I don't know, just kind of the first one, and also the villains were just great, and so that's my rating for so far, and kind of my short explanations where all of them are.
Yep, sorry, I'm trying to get back to some sloppy in the chat. So for me, I guess there's only one key flip that has gone on with me. and again, I have not watched everything, so I'm only talking about how this breaks out in comparison to what I have watched of the Netflix Marvel shows, which for me have been The Defenders, Luke Cage, Iron Fist, and this show. I have not watched Jessica Jones, and I have not watched all of season 1 of Daredevil, and I haven't watched any of season 2. So for me, Luke Cage and the Defenders, as I mentioned before, has been a tie. And Defenders has some weak points, but I can just never get over the high points of the Defenders are the highest amongst all of the Marvel Netflix stuff that I've watched, because I just can't get over the little schoolboy giggle factor that I get when you get Jessica Jones, Daredevil, Power Man, and Iron Fist all on screen at the same time in a big fight, right? Or even the throwdown between Iron Fist and Luke Cage, right? Because that's just a classic comic book matchup that you're always like, what if these two partners who work together ever got angry and actually had a fight, right? So you just get some very classic comic booky moments in the Defenders that you can't get in the other shows because you don't have all those characters on screen. So those two amongst the 4 that I've watched still break out as a tie at the top for me. And originally, I think after Street Level episode 1, I said that Punisher was coming in ahead of Iron Fist for me. Again, it starts to break down as a comic book show for me in the second half of the Punisher. The Iron Fist also doesn't end well for me. It was just a very, like, the whole thing of, like, something has gone wrong at the entrance to Kunlun, but the show just ends and we don't really, like, after watching the Defenders, I still don't know necessarily what the problem was with Kunlun. I just know people have disappeared, right? And I don't know whether the intention is to come back and wrap that up in Iron Fist or the next Defenders. And my real problem is I guess architecturally, I feel like we should have put the Kunlun thing in a box and then been ready to move on in season 2 and made that about, okay, we've seen Danny Rand, right? Now, how does Iron Fist transcend being a Tibetan monk protecting the passage to a secret city to being a superhero in the Marvel universe?
Yeah, I feel Iron Fist was not about the Iron Fist. It felt more about Danny Rand.
Right, which I feel is a fine choice to make, right? To tell those stories in discrete blocks. So originally I had the Punisher above Iron Fist. The way it ended, Iron Fist pops back to the top, not to the top, above Punisher for me, which I know is not a popular choice. But there are just certain things that I want out of these shows, and I'm not saying that that's right or how everybody else should feel. I'm just saying I came away feeling better after finishing Iron Fist than I walk away from the Punisher. And again, the other, I guess my last thing about the problem I have with the ending of the Punisher is, I didn't watch it, but I understand the history, right? So he shows up on Daredevil, he's the Punisher, and then when it ends, he's kind of not the Punisher, right? And we start this show off, and he's not the Punisher, he's Pete Castiglione, and then he becomes the Punisher. But then when the show ends, he's not the Punisher again, right? And I'm just like, dude, just make him the Punisher, put him in the van, have him going around New York and going around the country killing bad guys, right? So it's just a little schizophrenic for me. I just don't know where it's going, and it wraps up kind of in a way that is not entirely satisfying for me. Whereas it's a bit of a cheat, but Iron Fist at least wraps and then immediately platforms in the Defenders, right? So there's a stronger continuity of storyline for me, and for me that's a thing that's a big that I look for. So I just want to get back to mention some of the things Sloppy's mentioned. So he's looking forward to a potential Spawn reboot. So I would agree with him there. He likes Greg Capullo, Jim Lee, and Todd McFarlane for illustrators. I like all 3 of those as well. And then he's wondering if Image will ever produce a movie. They can make a killing with the Gen 13 series with Milanews, I can't. I'm not sure what he point of view. So I will say in response to Sloppy, I don't know about Image, but I know Valiant is spooling up with their cinematic content, and I can't remember what distributor. I don't know if that's with Sony. Hopefully, it wasn't with Fox. Just in terms of, it would be fine for it to go to Disney, but all that stuff that was with Fox, that was in production or pre-production, is just seems to be very questionable about whether or not it's where it's exactly it's going to go with Disney. And the big problem is that all that stuff seems to have been put on pause until they complete the merger and figure some of those things out. So I'm hoping the Valiant stuff wasn't with Fox. I can't remember exactly which distributor it's with, because there's a good chance that a lot of those things will go into purgatory and have to wait like a year delay before they continue forward. So, Dave, that's going to do it for me for my thoughts on Punisher. Anything else that you want to add?
Nope. I think we wrapped it up. We're almost on an hour mark.
Yeah, and Sloppy, as mentioned, I apologize if it comes through in sometimes there are audio problems on our live show or on YouTube that do not appear when I break this out into the audio version and post it on SoundCloud. So, but Sloppy has mentioned that my mic has been crackling a little bit, and we were aware of that before the show started, but we just got pushed for time and had to press on, and it was my call that it was better to proceed with this as it is than to try and switch it out at the last minute. So last thing I'll mention from Sloppy is I couldn't get into the Luke Cage series. It started out good. Then when he had the battle with his brother, I felt like I was watching a play, and he stopped watching after that. And I can definitely acknowledge that Luke Cage wasn't for everyone. It resonated with me for several reasons. But that's kind of the interesting thing to me about this is there is definitely not a universal singular answer about how these shows break out and how they impact everyone who watches them. A lot of them have different elements for different types of viewers, and that's to me the thing that makes the Netflix stuff interesting. So thanks for everybody who joins in or happens to swing back by and look at the archive version of this, either on the GWW Radio Network channel on YouTube or over on the E2KG Network channel. Once again, we'll be going back to doing our live shows on our own channel starting in 2018, and then we will be posting the edited versions on the GWW. We welcome you to view them, consume them, comment on them, join in the chat like Sloppy did, and inject your own thoughts and assessment of the things that we're discussing, and help us out in guiding the discussion towards something that is interesting. So thanks once again, everybody, for joining in or viewing the video. That's going to do it for us for tonight. We are out of here.